That is the first headings, the second headings, and the third headings. In a thesis, you'd never go below 3 headings, never the fourth headings. Even though we have it, and only if you really need it, you can have a fourth heading, but try to avoid it. You can use bullet form or anything else. Okay, so I already said it, but here I also put the different points in the different styles, and here you can see the difference between Arial, Georgia, and Times New Roman. So you can see the difference in text, even though it's 12 points.
Sorry, I think somebody knocked. Is the door?
No, I can't open it, unfortunately. I've tried, but it's not working, so somebody else have to help me out. Thank you. Anyway, so you can see, even though it's 12 points, the difference between these. Good. Welcome. Anyway, so and another thing is, of course, how you justify the text in the material. That can also be very disturbing, as well as how much space you put in the text. So, sounds trivial, but sometimes it's not. Oh, by the way, before continuing, you have to use Arial for headings and Georgia for text, because that's KTH standard. So we can't change that. So that's the layout you have to use. Let me give an example of the difference between how easy and how hard things are to read. So I give you 2 minutes or 1 minute to read this through and see what you think about. They're equal in text. So, how did it feel? Which one flow was the best flow? Was there any difference, or was the second easier or harder? Easier? More air in it? Everybody think the same? Okay. I know there are others that think the opposite, and do you know the reason for that? It's because you can see when the new paragraph starts in the first one. That you can't see in the second one. So yes, it matters. So let me give you 2 other examples, and this is Helvetica and Garamond. What do you think? Is one easier than the other to read? Are they similar? Did it take time, or it's about the same? Probably the first text is a little bit harder to read. You probably had to read each and every character in another way than the second one. But Garamond is not the best either. So none of these fonts are really good to read when it comes to text. And this one you are kind of used to, even though it's a Georgia, you are usually used to Times New Roman, but these are very similar. I don't know what you think about the speed, but I think it speeds up when I get the serifs rather than the other one. So those things are really important when you write a thesis. So therefore, we have some suggestions, and therefore, when you write text, you should think about this, how to present it well. When it comes to spaces, we usually have a lot of space in a thesis. And one of the first questions I got is that, how many pages do I have to write? And I say 40 to 60 pages. I said, oh my God, I won't get 40 pages. What I have to say takes 1 page about. Well, I said it's usually the case that it's hard to express something unless you use 40 pages. And one of the reasons is that you have a lot of pages that is only like a transport until you start to explain what you're doing. And first of all, you will have at least 10 pages only with the title, with the table of contents, with each chapter start with a new page. And then you have the reference list, which is not included in the thesis. In the other sense, of course, they are references, but they are actually, I mean, there are pages that you will use, and those have to be within this 40 pages. So it's a lot of pages that will be additional to what you actually use when you write your 40 pages. So 40 pages become 30 pages. And then you have to explain the background, the theory, and the theory is about what others have been writing. And in the theory should also be related work. And what is related work? Well, related work is somebody had done that is very, very, very close to what you are doing, that you describe and you tell what you used and what you did not use. That's related work. So if you are going to create a system, all the systems that are out there are not related work. But if you have a system for a particular reason, if you find something similar to that, that's related work. So think about the techniques that you might use. If you find somebody who had used those techniques, you explain that in related work, and then you tell what you're going to use. Also, if you find something that is very, very, very similar to what you have done, you show that, and it's okay to do that. It's better to explain that you have found it than the opposite, because then you showed what is out there and what you are doing is really valid. So it's a way of validate, I would say that your project is valid. So it's better to show than the opposite, even though it's very, very close. It's absolutely possible to do that. So that's one of the things. Another thing that shrinks the number of pages is that margins. You have a lot of margins, and you also have page numbers. So that also shrinks the text. And then you're using paragraphs. And paragraphs gives more space in the text. So then you will shrink even more. And if you have 1.5 line spacing, well, soon you don't have any text left. So you see, it will really shrink a lot. So, and in the end, you might feel that 40 pages, wow, I haven't even started to explain what I want to say. So that's how it works. Okay, so that's one of the things. Another thing is that when you have figures or tables, you can't just put them in, the diagrams of what you are using. You have to explain what's in it. You even have to explain the figures we are looking at. So even though it says, we usually say one picture says more than 1,000 words, in a thesis that's not enough. So you can't just put a figure in and that's it. You have to use it like a picture and you explain exactly what the reader should interpret from it. So either above the figure or after the figure, it should be an explanation text. So for each figure you use, it will also take 1 page. And the figure has to have text telling what's in it, so a figure text. The table text is always above the table, but the figure text is always underneath it. Have you seen the difference before? But that's also taking space. And then the figures have to have space between it, around it. So you see, it's a lot of space here and there. Since we're talking about the figures, I also wanted to say one thing, and that is when you enumerate the figures or tables, if you have plenty of figures in the thesis, you can use the chapter number and which number the figure has. But if you only have 3 or 4 or 5 figures in the whole thesis, you don't need a chapter number. You just say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's it. The problem with having many figures without using chapter is when you start to shuffle the figures around, then your numbers, the figures, will actually be out of order. So think about that when you do that. So to be smart, you just put an X in the beginning, and when you're almost finished, then you put 1,